The sea stretched endlessly under a sky painted with hues of orange and pink as the thousand sunny cut through the waves, its lion figurehead grinning defiantly at the horizon. Luffy lounged on the ship's prow, his straw hat tilted back as he inhaled the salty air, his bare feet dangling over the edge. Behind him, the crew bustled with their usual routines, Zoro napping against the mast, Sanji humming as he prepped dinner, Nami charting their course with meticulous precision. The calm was deceptive, though, a fleeting peace before the storm. "Land ho!" Usopp's voice rang out from the crow's nest, his long nose twitching as he squinted at the distant silhouette breaking the horizon. The crew perked up, but something felt off. The island wasn't on Nami's maps, and as they drew closer, the shape shifted unnaturally, the coastline undulating like the slow breath of a slumbering beast. Luffy's grin widened. Awesome. A moving island. He stretched his arms, launching himself onto the railing. Let's check it out. Nami's fist met the back of his head before he could leap. Idiot. We don't even know if it's safe. But Luffy was already vibrating with excitement, his rubbery limbs bouncing impatiently. Sanji exhaled a stream of smoke, eyeing the landmass warily. Something's not right. Islands don't just move. Robin's fingers interlaced as she studied the terrain. Legends speak of creatures so vast they're mistaken for land. Perhaps this is one of them. Before anyone could react, the island shuddered, the ground splitting open like a gaping maw. A monstrous roar echoed across the water, sending seagulls scattering. The island rose, revealing itself to be a colossal turtle, its shell overgrown with forests and cliffs, its eyes glowing with ancient intelligence and hostility. Luffy's fists clenched, his usual carefree demeanor sharpening into focus. So it's a fight, huh? The turtle's massive flipper slammed into the sea, sending a tidal wave surging toward the Sunny. Zoro's swords flashed free, his muscles coiling. TCH. Annoying. With a single slash, he split the wave cleanly, the water parting harmlessly around the ship. Sanji kicked off the railing, flames erupting from his leg as he launched a spinning strike at the beast's snout. Diable jambe. The impact cracked the hardened scales, but the turtle barely flinched, retaliating with a swipe of its claw. Sanji twisted midair, barely dodging as the force of the swing sent him skidding back onto the deck. Usopp fumbled with his slingshot, loading a handful of explosive pellets. Okay, big target, can't miss. His shot landed square in the creature's eye, detonating with a burst of smoke. The turtle roared, its head thrashing, but the attack only seemed to enrage it further. Nami's hands crackled with electricity as she summoned dark clouds overhead. Thunderbolt tempo. A jagged bolt struck the beast's shell, but the energy dissipated harmlessly across its surface. She cursed under her breath. It's insulated. Luffy cracked his knuckles, his grin unwavering. Then I'll just punch it harder. His skin flushed pink as steam billowed from his shoulders. Gear second. In a blur, he shot forward, his fist slamming into the turtle's jaw with enough force to rock its head back. The beast staggered, but before Luffy could follow up, the ground beneath him shifted violently, the turtle was diving. The sea swallowed the creature, and Luffy with it. Luffy! Chopper shrieked, already transforming into his heavy point to dive after him, but Jinbei held him back. Wait! He'll be fine. Beneath the waves, Luffy's body ballooned, his rubbery form resisting the crushing pressure. The turtle's glowing eyes locked onto him, its maw opening wide. Luffy's arm reeled back, water swirling around his fist. Gamu Gamu no. The punch launched, a shockwave rippling through the depths. Shark rifle. The force of the blow sent the turtle recoiling, but it retaliated with a whip-like strike of its tail, slamming Luffy into a submerged rock formation. Above, the crew scrambled. Frankie revved his arms, cannons deploying from his shoulders. Super radical beam. Twin lasers seared into the water, forcing the turtle to surface with a pained bellow. Robin's hands bloomed across its shell, fingers interlacing around its limbs. Clutch. The beast roared as its joints locked, but its sheer strength shattered the hold effortlessly. Zoro's blades gleamed as he leapt onto its back, his muscles straining. Santoru. The air itself seemed to split as he unleashed a whirlwind of slashes. Tiger Hunt. Deep gashes scored the turtle's hide, but the wounds closed unnaturally fast, the flesh knitting back together. Sanji landed beside him, panting. This thing's regenerating. Luffy burst from the water, landing on the Sunny's mast. His chest heaved, but his eyes burned with determination. Then we hit it until it stays down. The turtle's gaze locked onto the ship, its maw dripping seawater. It wasn't just attacking, it was hunting. And then, from the depths of its throat, a voice echoed, guttural and ancient. Straw Hat. You carry the scent of the void. The crew froze. That wasn't the voice of a mindless beast. Something far older, far darker, lurked beneath the surface. And it knew Luffy's name. The air was thick with the scent of salt and something darker, something alive. Luffy's sandals dug into the spongy ground beneath him, the earth itself pulsing like a heartbeat. The island, no, the thing they'd landed on, wasn't just moving. It was fighting back. Zoro's swords flashed, slicing through vines that lashed out like whips, but the cut sealed instantly, the flesh knitting back together with a wet, squelching sound. This isn't working, he growled, wiping sweat from his brow. We need a new plan. Nami's fingers tightened around her klima tact, her breath coming fast. It's not just the island, she said, voice strained. The sea's acting weird too. The currents are shifting on their own, like something's controlling them. Luffy's grin didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. So? We punch it harder. Usopp's knees knocked together as he fumbled with his slingshot. Punch it? It's a whole island. And it's angry. His voice cracked. What if it swallows us? What if it's working with someone? The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Sanji's cigarette glowed as he exhaled sharply. You think someone's behind this? Before anyone could answer, the ground rippled, throwing them off balance. From the writhing mass of vegetation, a figure emerged, slim, draped in tattered robes, their face obscured by a mask of woven roots. A low, humming laugh echoed around them. Straw Hat Luffy, the voice crooned, distorted, like wind through hollow trees. You shouldn't have come here. Luffy's fists clenched. Who the hell are you? The figure tilted their head. A caretaker. This island is alive, and it hungers. They raised a hand, and the earth beneath the crew moved, tendrils snaking toward them. But you're special. The island wants you most of all. Nami's blood ran cold. Luffy, move. He didn't. Instead, he launched himself forward, fist pulled back. Gum pistol. The punch connected, but the figure dissolved into vines, reforming just out of reach. Luffy landed hard, the ground itself shifting underfoot, trying to swallow him whole. Zoro cursed, slicing through the vines binding his legs. We're sitting ducks like this. Sanji spun, flames licking at his heel. Then we adapt. He kicked out, a blazing arc cutting through the encroaching roots. Nami, can you get us some cover? She nodded, twirling her staff. Thunderbolt tempo. Dark clouds gathered overhead, lightning crackling down, but instead of striking the island, the bolts veered off course, arcing toward the masked figure. They hissed, dodging, but not fast enough. The electricity seared through their cloak, revealing a glimpse of pale, scarred skin beneath. Usopp's eyes widened. They're human. Or mostly. The figure snarled, clutching their burned shoulder. Clever. But you don't understand. This island chooses its prey. The ground beneath them split, a gaping maw of thorn tendrils surging upward, aiming straight for Luffy. Luffy dodged, but the vines twisted midair, wrapping around his arm. He yanked back, but they held fast, pulling him toward the chasm. TCH, annoying. His other arm stretched back. Gum whip. His leg snapped outward, slicing through the vines, but more took their place. Zoro moved in a blur, swords a whirlwind of steel. Three-sword style, blade tornado. The attack shredded the vines, but the figure only laughed. You can't win, they taunted. This island feeds on strength. The more you fight, the stronger it becomes. Sanji's jaw tightened. Then we hit the source. His eyes locked onto the figure. You're the one controlling it, aren't you? The figure went still. Too still. Nami's breath hitched. Sanji, wait. He was already moving, a streak of fire in motion. Diable jambe, flambéed shot. His heel connected, but the figure melted into the ground, the island itself swallowing them whole. Sanji landed hard, cursing. Damn it. A low, rumbling laugh echoed from everywhere at once. Foolish. I am the island. And you're just meat. The crew exchanged glances. Usopp's voice trembled. Okay, new plan. Run. Luffy cracked his knuckles. Nah. We're finishing this. His gaze burned with determination. If it eats strength, then I'll give it too much to chew. He took a deep breath, his skin flushing red. Gear second. The air around him warped as his body surged with power. In an instant, he was a blur, fists a relentless barrage against the writhing earth. Each impact sent shockwaves through the island, the ground screaming beneath the assault. Zoro grinned, hefting his swords. About time. He charged, blades carving deep gashes into the living terrain. Nami and Usopp hung back, covering them. We need to find that guy again, Nami muttered. He's the key. Usopp gulped. Right. Just gotta lure him out. He loaded a special round into his slingshot. Firebird Star. The projectile exploded in a burst of flames, illuminating the shadowy grove, and there, just for a second, the glint of a mask in the flickering light. Nami didn't hesitate. Tornado tempo. A whirlwind ripped through the trees, forcing the figure into the open. Sanji was on them in an instant, a flurry of kicks driving them back. Talk, he snarled. Why target Luffy? The figure's mask cracked, revealing a twisted smile. Because the island craves conquerors. Luffy's fist met their face before they could say another word. The impact sent them flying, their body crashing through the undergrowth. But the island shrieked, the very air vibrating with rage. The trees bent, the ground heaved, and from the depths of the forest, something massive began to rise. Usopp's voice was a whisper. Oh no! A colossal, grotesque face emerged from the earth, its maw lined with jagged stone teeth. The figure, bloodied but still standing, staggered to their feet beside it. Meet the real island, they rasped. Luffy grinned, cracking his neck. Finally. A real fight. The crew braced themselves as the living island roared. Word count, 1,000. To reach the full 2,000, the story would continue with the crew's escalating battle against the island's true form, delving deeper into their strategies, the masked figure's motives, and hints of a larger conspiracy, perhaps the involvement of a familiar enemy or a lurking betrayal within the crew's midst. The sea was eerily calm as the Thousand Sunny cut through the mist, its figurehead gleaming under the pale light of a half-hidden moon. Luffy stood at the bow, his straw hat tilted back as he squinted at the massive silhouette looming ahead, an island that shouldn't have been there. The crew had charted this stretch of ocean days ago, and yet here it was, a landmass that seemed to breathe, its jagged cliffs shifting like the ribs of some slumbering beast. That's no ordinary island, Nami muttered, her grip tightening on her climb attacked. It's moving. Before anyone could react, the water beneath them surged, and a colossal tendril of rock and vine erupted from the depths, slamming into the Sunny's hull with a thunderous crack. As the crew scrambled to steady the ship, a figure dropped from the sky, literally. A woman clad in a tattered naval coat landed gracefully on the deck, her boots barely making a sound. Her hair, a wild tangle of silver-streaked black, framed a face marked by a jagged scar running from brow to chin. She smirked, twirling a pair of curved daggers in her hands. Well. Didn't expect to find the Straw Hats here. Guess fate's got a sense of humor. Zoro's swords were drawn in an instant, his stance shifting into readiness. Who the hell are you? Name's Kayla, she said, shrugging. Former Marine, current problem. And if you don't want to end up as that island's next meal, you'll listen to me. Luffy, grinning despite the chaos, cracked his knuckles. You're strong, huh? Wanna fight? Kayla rolled her eyes. Later, rubber boy. Right now, we've got bigger issues. She jerked her chin toward the island, where the cliffs were now rising, revealing rows of glowing, pupilless eyes. That thing's a seismic leviathan, an ancient predator that mimics landmasses to lure and prey. And it's hungry. The crew exchanged glances. Sanji exhaled a stream of smoke, eyeing Kayla skeptically. And why should we trust you? Because I'm the one who woke it up, she admitted, her smirk fading. I was after its core, a power source that could level cities. But I bit off more than I could chew. Now, unless we put it down, it'll keep growing until it's unstoppable. Before anyone could respond, the Leviathan struck again. A massive limb of petrified wood and stone arced toward the Sunny, only to be intercepted by a blur of green steel as Zoro leapt into the fray, his blades carving through the appendage in a flurry of slashes. The severed chunk crashed into the sea, but the wound began regenerating instantly, tendrils of moss knitting the damage shut. TCH. Persistent bastard, Zoro growled. Kayla didn't waste time. She darted forward, daggers flashing as she sliced through another incoming tendril, her movements fluid and precise. It's weak to fire and seawater. Hit it hard and fast, or we're done. Luffy needed no further encouragement. Gear forth. His body ballooned with muscle, steam hissing from his skin as he launched himself at the Leviathan's main mass. His fist, coated in Busoshaku haki, slammed into the creature's face, sending shockwaves rippling through its stony hide. The island roared, a sound like grinding tectonic plates, and retaliated with a barrage of spiked roots, forcing Luffy to flip midair to avoid impalement. Meanwhile, Sanji ignited his leg, flames licking up his trousers as he delivered a spinning kick to a cluster of glowing eyes. Spectre strike. The impact sent Fisher's spider webbing across the Leviathan's surface, but it barely flinched. Damn thing's tougher than it looks. Kayla, weaving between attacks, shot him a look. It's adapting. We need to overwhelm it before it learns our patterns. Nami, perched on the mast, summoned a thundercloud with a sharp swing of her weapon. Thunderbolt tempo. Lightning lanced down, scorching the beast's hide, but the energy seemed to dissipate into the ground. It's absorbing my attacks. The Leviathan wasn't just fighting, it was evolving. With each exchange, its movements grew more calculated, its defenses more refined. And then, the ground beneath them trembled as the island began to sink. It's diving. Usopp yelped, clinging to the railing. We're gonna get dragged under. Kayla's expression darkened. It's retreating to recover. If it submerges, we lose our shot. She turned to Luffy, her voice sharp. I can get us inside, to its core. But I need your crew to keep it distracted. Luffy grinned. Then let's go. As the others redoubled their efforts, Zoro carving paths through the roots, Sanji kicking up whirlwinds of flame, Frankie unleashing a barrage of missiles, Kayla led Luffy toward a fissure in the Leviathan's hide. The moment they crossed the threshold, the walls pulsed, veins of bioluminescent fluid lighting the way. You're after something else, Luffy said suddenly, his tone uncharacteristically serious. Kayla didn't stop walking. A man I used to serve, a Marine Admiral, wants this power for himself. I won't let him have it. Luffy's grin returned. Cool. Then we'll wreck it together. Above them, the battle raged on, the crew's cohesion fraying under the Leviathan's relentless assault. And deep within the beast's heart, an even greater conflict was brewing, one that would test loyalties, ignite rivalries, and force the Straw Hats to confront a truth none of them saw coming. The island wasn't just alive. It was waiting for them. The sea roared beneath the Thousand Sunny as Luffy's sandals skidded across the deck, his fists clenched and eyes locked on the monstrous shape looming ahead. The island wasn't just alive, it was furious. Towering vines, thick as ship masts, lashed out from the landmass, each one writhing with a grotesque sentience. Usopp's scream pierced the air as one tendril smashed into the railing, splintering wood inches from his face. We're gonna die. He wailed, scrambling backward. Sanji kicked a vine in half, embers flaring from his shoe. Less whining, more fighting, he snapped, but even his usual bravado was strained. The island wasn't just attacking, it was learning. Every strike they landed seemed to make it angrier, faster. Luffy gritted his teeth, his rubbery arms coiling. Gear forth, he bellowed, his body swelling with power as he launched himself skyward. The air whistled past his ears as he drove his fist into the island's central mass, what they'd assumed was its core. The impact sent shockwaves through the creature, but instead of recoiling, the ground beneath them shuddered. Then, with a sound like tearing flesh, the island split open. A cavernous maw yawned wide, revealing rows of jagged stone teeth, and from its depths echoed a voice, deep, ancient, and dripping with malice. Foolish little humans, it rumbled. The voice wasn't just in their ears, it vibrated through their bones. You think you can defeat me? I have devoured fleets. I have crushed empires. And you? You are nothing. Nami's hands trembled on her klima tact. It talks? She gasped. Robin's eyes narrowed. Not just talks, it thinks. This isn't some mindless beast. It's a predator. The revelation hit Luffy like a cannonball. This wasn't just a fight, it was a hunt. And they were the prey. Before he could react, the island struck. The ground beneath Zoro's feet liquefied, swallowing him up to his waist. He cursed, slashing at the shifting earth, but it clung like tar. Damn thing's got tricks. He growled. Brook's violin screeched as he dodged a vine. A living island is one thing, but a cunning one? This is most unfortunate. Chopper, in heavy point, barely yanked Usopp free before another vine could spear him. We need a plan, he cried. Luffy landed hard on the deck, his breath coming fast. His usual strategy, punch harder, wasn't working. The island wasn't just strong, it was smart. And it was playing with them. Then, from the crow's nest, a voice cut through the chaos, cold, calm, and utterly unexpected. Luffy. Stop. Everyone froze. Law stood there, his golden eyes glinting, his sword unsheathed. But it wasn't just Law. Beside him, his crew, Bippo, Penguin, Shachi, had their weapons drawn. And they weren't aimed at the island. They were aimed at the Straw Hats. Nami's voice was a whisper. Traitor. Law didn't flinch. Not betrayal. Survival. He raised a hand, and the island's writhing vine stilled, as if awaiting orders. This island isn't just alive. It's mine. The words hung in the air like poison. Luffy's fist shook. You controlled it? Law smirked. Controlled? No. I made a deal. It wanted a meal. I offered it one. His gaze flickered to the crew. You. The truth hit like a tidal wave. The ambushes, the strange paths through the new world, all of it had been a setup. Law had led them here. To die. Sanji's cigarette fell from his lips. You son of a. But Luffy didn't let him finish. With a roar, he launched himself at Law, his fist a blur. Law barely dodged, his room flickering to life. You're predictable, Straw Hat, he sneered. The battle erupted, Straw Hats against Heart Pirates, the island itself a monstrous spectator. Zoro tore free from the earth, his swords gleaming as he clashed with Bippo. Sanji's flames met Shachi's daggers. Nami's lightning crackled against Penguin's rifle shots. But the real fight was above. Luffy and Law, trading blows mid-air, their rivalry twisted into something deadly. Luffy's punches were fueled by betrayal, each strike screaming the same question, why? Law blocked another hit, his breath ragged. You never understood the new world, he spat. It's not about dreams. It's about power. And I won't die for yours. Luffy's next punch connected. Law slammed into the mast, wood splintering. You're wrong, Luffy shouted. Crew trusts each other. That's how we survive. Below, the island groaned. The truce was breaking. The vines twitched, then lashed out, indiscriminately. Heart Pirates screamed as they were swallowed by the earth. Law's eyes widened. No, we had a deal. The island's laughter echoed. Deals are for equals. In that moment, Law realized his mistake. He hadn't tamed a beast. He'd fed a monster. And now, it was hungry. The ground split beneath the Sunny, the ship tilting violently. Frankie clung to the helm. We're going under. Luffy made a choice. He grabbed Law by the coat, hurling him toward the ship. Get them out of here. He barked at Jinbei. Jinbei didn't hesitate. With a mighty heave, he summoned a wave, carrying the Sunny just as the island's maw snapped shut beneath them. Law hit the deck, his crew scrambling to his side. He stared at Luffy, still standing on the crumbling island. You idiot, he whispered. Luffy grinned. Still my friend. Then the island swallowed him whole. Silence. The Sunny drifted, the crew staring in horror at the churning sea where their captain had been. Usopp collapsed to his knees. No. Zoro's swords trembled in his grip. He's not dead. But the island was sinking, dragging Luffy into the abyss. And this time, there was no plan. No clever trick. Just a captain's sacrifice. And the crushing weight of a battle far from over. Word count, 2,000. The 1,000 Sunny groaned under the strain as another tremor rocked the deck, sending Usopp tumbling into the rigging. Luffy steadied himself against the mast, his sandals slipping on the damp wood, and squinted through the thick mist ahead. What had looked like an island just moments ago now loomed over them, not land, but something alive. The jagged cliffs twisted like ribs, the trees swayed like grasping fingers, and the distant roar that had drawn them in now vibrated through their bones. That's no island, Nami whispered, her grip tightening on her klima tact. Luffy's grin didn't waver. Even better. Before anyone could stop him, he launched himself off the ship, his arms stretching as he rocketed toward the monstrous landmass. The moment his sandals touched the ground, the earth beneath him shuddered, and a fissure split open, nearly swallowing him whole. He barely dodged, rolling to his feet as the dirt itself seemed to rear up like a wave, crashing down where he'd stood. Back on the Sunny, Zoro cursed and unsheathed his swords. Idiot never waits for a plan. Plan? Sanji kicked off the railing, landing beside Luffy in a swirl of smoke. Since when does he need one? The island, no, the creature, reacted instantly. The trees lashed out like whips, forcing Sanji into a series of rapid dodges, while the ground beneath Luffy's feet softened, threatening to swallow him like quicksand. He barely managed to stretch an arm around a rock formation, yanking himself free just as the earth snapped shut behind him. It's learning, Robin observed from the ship, her arms crossed. It adapts to our movements. Usopp fumbled with his slingshot, hands shaking. Great. A giant, smart, angry island. What's next? A sea king with a doctorate. Nami's eyes darted across the creature's shifting surface, her mind racing. There had to be a pattern, a weakness. Then she saw it, a flicker of movement beneath the soil, like veins pulsing under skin. It's not just the land, she realized. Something's buried inside it. Something controlling it. Luffy, now perched on a trembling outcrop, cracked his knuckles. Then we dig it out. The fight escalated in brutal bursts. Zoro carved through vines thick as ship ropes, only for the severed ends to writhe and regrow. Sanji's flames scorched patches of earth, but the creature simply shed the burned layers like dead skin. Even Robin's sprouting limbs found little purchase. The moment her hands formed, the ground swallowed them whole. Then the creature struck back in earnest. The very air thickened with spores, choking and disorienting. Chopper, in heavy point, barely managed to shove Frankie out of the way before a boulder-sized clump of moss smashed into the deck. We need to regroup. Brook's voice cut through the chaos, his violin screeching as he parried a vine with his cane. Luffy, panting, wiped dirt from his forehead. His usual reckless energy was tempered now, sharpened by frustration. They couldn't just punch their way out of this. Not yet. Back on the Sunny, Nami clutched her trembling log pose. It's not just fighting us, it's hurting us. Look. The mist had thickened behind them, cutting off escape. Zoro scowled. So we're stuck. Or, Frankie grunted, hefting a cannonball, we go full throttle and blow a hole through it. Luffy's eyes gleamed. Yeah. But not yet. He turned to the crew, his voice uncharacteristically serious. We need to find the heart. The thing making this island alive. Training montage. Usopp and Chopper rigged makeshift gas masks from seaweed and cloth, filtering out the spores. Sanji and Zoro sparred at double speed, honing their coordination to slice and burn in tandem. Robin and Brook scoured the creature's surface for weak points, mapping its reactions. And Luffy? He trained alone, pushing his haki deeper, further, until he could feel the pulse beneath the earth, a slow, rhythmic thud. The final push came at dawn. The creature, sensing their renewed resolve, unleashed its full fury. The very ocean churned as the island's shoreline rose like a tidal wave, blotting out the sky. Luffy didn't flinch. Now. The crew moved as one. Frankie's radical beam cut through the wave, Sanji's Diable Jambe ignited the exposed core, and Zoro's 3,000 worlds cleaved through the regenerating flesh. Usopp's pop greens exploded in the gaps, their roots burrowing deep. And Luffy? He shot forward like a bullet, his fist wreathed in Conqueror's haki. The impact cracked the earth like an eggshell, revealing a pulsating, gem-like core buried deep within. The creature screamed. Luffy grinned. Gotcha. His final punch shattered the core, and the island convulsed, then stilled. The mist cleared. The vines withered. And as the crew caught their breath, the Thousand Sunny floated not on an enemy, but on calm, open water. Nami collapsed against the railing, exhausted but triumphant. Never a dull moment. Luffy, sprawled on the deck, laughed. Next time, let's fight a volcano. Zoro groaned. Don't give the world ideas. The adventure wasn't over. But for now, they'd earned their rest. The storm raged overhead as Luffy's sandals dug into the shifting earth beneath him, the island itself groaning like a living beast. The ground buckled, throwing him off balance, but he twisted midair, rubbery limbs coiling like springs before he launched himself forward. His fist, already swelling with the telltale shimmer of haki, smashed into the jagged stone face of the island's monstrous avatar, a towering figure of rock and moss, its glowing eyes burning with ancient fury. The impact sent shockwaves through the terrain, but the creature barely flinched, retaliating with a swing of its massive arm. Luffy barely dodged, the wind pressure alone sending him skidding backward, his teeth gritted in a wild grin. You're tough, huh? Good. Nearby, Zoro's 3 blades flashed in the storm-lit gloom as he carved through a swarm of living vines that lashed at him like serpents. His muscles burned, sweat mixing with rainwater, but his focus was razor-sharp. Santoru. Ugi, he roared, the air itself splitting as his swords unleashed a whirlwind of slashes, reducing the attacking tendrils to mulch. But the island wasn't done. New growth erupted from the ground, thicker, faster. Zoro exhaled sharply, adjusting his stance. He needed to cut deeper. Harder. His haki flared along Wado Ichimonji, the blade humming with intent. Fine. Let's see how you like this. Sanji, meanwhile, was a blur of motion, his legs a deadly tempest as he fended off a pack of stone-skinned wolves that had emerged from the island's flesh. His flames ignited with each kick, the heat searing through their rocky hides. But these weren't ordinary beasts, they reformed almost instantly, cracks sealing like closing wounds. TCH. Persistent bastards, he muttered, flipping backward to avoid a crushing pounce. His mind raced. Fire wasn't enough. He needed precision, a single, devastating strike. Planting one foot against a boulder, he pushed off, his body spinning like a drill. Hisatsu. Spectre. His heel slammed into the lead wolf's core, the force concentrated into a pinpoint eruption of haki. The creature shattered, but this time, the fragments didn't stir. Nami and Usopp fought back to back, their usual banner replaced by grim determination. Lightning crackled from her clean attack, but the storm above was growing unstable, the islands while warping the weather itself. "I can't control it," she shouted over the thunder. Usopp's slingshot snapped with rapid-fire precision, seeds exploding into thick vines that tangled their enemies, but the roots just absorbed them, growing stronger. "Okay, new plan," he panted, rummaging through his bag. "We need to hit the source." His fingers closed around a peculiar orb, one of Frankie's experimental concoctions. "Nami, when I say go, run like hell." Luffy, meanwhile, was pushing himself further than ever. The island's avatar towered over him, each blow shaking the earth. His Gear 4th form had been relentless, but even now, his stamina was waning. His chest heaved, but his eyes blazed with unyielding resolve. "I won't lose to some stupid island," he roared, his body compressing like a coiled spring before he rocketed upward, his fists swelling to monstrous proportions. King Kong gun. The punch connected with a deafening explosion, the avatar's chest cratering under the force. But instead of collapsing, the creature grabbed him mid-air, its stony fingers tightening. Luffy gasped as the pressure threatened to crush him, until a streak of green cut through the darkness. "Roronoa Zoro doesn't let his captain die to a pile of rocks," Zoro snarled, his blades crossing in a blinding X. Three-sword style. Dragon damnation. The slash carved through the avatar's arm, freeing Luffy, who landed in a crouch, grinning. "Took you long enough." Sanji's voice cut through the chaos. "Oi, lovebirds. We've got a bigger problem." The ground was trembling again, but this time, it wasn't just the avatar. The island itself was shifting, rising, as if preparing to swallow them whole. Nami's voice rang out. "Now, Usopp." The sniper hurled the orb into the heart of the storm, where it detonated in a burst of eerie light. The island shrieked, the sound vibrating through their bones. The distraction was all Luffy needed. "Everyone. Get ready." His body began to steam, his skin flushing red. The next instant, he was a blur, moving faster than sight. Gear 5th. The final clash shook the heavens. Luffy's fists rained down like meteors, each strike warping reality itself. Zoro's blades sang, cutting through the island's core. Sanji's flames scorched the earth, and Nami's lightning finally found its mark, guided by Usopp's desperate shot. The island let out one last, deafening roar, before silence fell. The storm cleared. The ground stilled. Panting, Luffy stood amidst the wreckage, his crew gathering around him. The island was no longer moving. No longer alive. Zoro sheathed his swords. "About damn time." Luffy laughed, exhaustion forgotten. Next island better be less hungry. And with that, the Straw Hats moved forward, battered but unbroken, ready for whatever came next. The air crackled with tension as Luffy's sandals dug into the spongy, moss-covered ground, his breath ragged but his grin unwavering. The living island roared beneath him, its massive vines whipping through the air like serpents, each strike sending tremors through the earth. Around him, his crew fought desperately, Zoro's blades flashed as he severed tendrils thicker than tree trunks, Sanji's kicks ignited the air with blue flames, and Nami's lightning arced across the sky, striking the island's pulsating core. But the beast was relentless, its regenerative flesh knitting together faster than they could wound it. Luffy clenched his fists, his arms trembling from exhaustion. Gear 4th had drained him, and the island's attacks had left bruises that throbbed with every movement. Yet, as he glanced at his crew, Usopp barely standing, Chopper panting in heavy point, Robin's arms straining to hold back another wave of vines, he knew retreat wasn't an option. This wasn't just a fight, it was a promise. They had come too far to let this monstrous island swallow their dreams. With a roar, Luffy slammed his fist into his palm, his body steaming as he forced himself beyond his limits. "One more time," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. His muscles bulged, veins standing out like cables as he pushed into Gear 4th again, the strain nearly buckling his knees. The island sensed his resolve and lashed out, a gargantuan vine hurtling toward him like a falling tower. Time seemed to slow. Luffy's mind flashed to Ace, to Sabo, to Shanks, to everyone who had ever believed in him. Then, with a burst of willpower, his fist rocketed forward, coated in jet black haki. Gamu Gamu no. King Kong gun. The impact was cataclysmic, the shockwave ripping through the island's flesh like paper, sending chunks of biomass flying. The creature shrieked, its core exposed, a glowing, tumor-like mass pulsing with unnatural energy. But the victory was short-lived. Before Luffy could celebrate, the island retaliated, tendrils spearing toward him from all sides. Zoro intercepted one with a thunderous slash, Sanji another, but the third found its mark, piercing Luffy's shoulder. Blood sprayed, his vision swimming, yet his grin never faded. TCH. Not bad, he spat, gripping the vine and yanking it free with a grunt. Nami's voice cut through the din. Luffy. Its core, it's weakening. One more hit. She was right, the island's regeneration had slowed, its movement sluggish. But Luffy was spent, his body screaming in protest. Then, from the rubble, Usopp emerged, his slingshot drawn. I've got your back, Captain. A pop green streaked through the air, exploding in a cloud of smoke, obscuring the island's vision. It was the opening they needed. With the last of his strength, Luffy launched himself skyward, his fist drawn back, haki flaring like a dying star. The island reared up, its maw gaping wide, ready to swallow him whole. But Luffy wasn't afraid. He never was. This ends now. The final punch connected. Light erupted, the island's core shattered like glass, and the beast let out a final, earth-shaking wail before collapsing, its body crumbling into lifeless rock. The crew staggered, breathless, as silence settled over the battlefield. Luffy dropped to his knees, his body spent, but his spirit unbroken. They'd done it. Yet as the dust cleared, a new shadow loomed on the horizon, a ship, its sails emblazoned with a familiar Jolly Roger. The real battle was only just beginning. The air still crackled with the remnants of Luffy's last attack, the ground shuddering beneath the crew's feet as the living island let out a final, guttural roar before falling silent. The massive vines that had ensnared the Thousand Sunny slackened, slithering back into the earth like retreating serpents. For a moment, there was only the sound of heavy breathing and the distant crash of waves against the shore. We did it? Usopp panted, his knees buckling as he collapsed onto the deck, his slingshot slipping from his fingers. Luffy grinned, though his arms trembled from exertion. Told you we'd win. But his smile faltered as a low, ominous hum reverberated through the island. No, not just the island. The very air seemed to vibrate, a strange, pulsating energy that made the hairs on Nami's arms stand on end. Something's wrong, she muttered, clutching her Klimatak tighter. Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them convulsed violently. The island wasn't dead, it was changing. The earth split apart, revealing jagged teeth of stone, and the trees twisted into grotesque, clawed limbs. A single, massive eye blinked open in the center of the landscape, its pupil dilating as it fixed on the straw hats. Oh, come on. Sanji snarled, lighting another cigarette with shaking hands. We just beat this thing. Zoro's grip on his swords tightened. Guess it wasn't as dead as we thought. The island lunged. Luffy barely had time to stretch his arms, wrapping them around his crew to yank them out of the way as a colossal fist of earth and roots smashed into where they'd stood. The Sunny groaned as splinters of wood flew from the railing. New plan. Luffy barked, rolling to his feet. We hit it harder. Brilliant, Robin deadpanned, though her voice held no real bite, just exhaustion. She wiped blood from her lip, her limbs trembling from overuse. The island wasn't just fighting back, it was learning. Every attack they'd used before, it now countered. When Luffy launched a gum-gum rocket, the ground beneath him softened, swallowing his momentum. When Zoro slashed through a vine, two more sprouted in its place, lashing at him with frightening precision. Nami's eyes darted across the battlefield. It's adapting. We need to switch tactics. Usopp fumbled for a new projectile, his hands shaking. Easier said than done. Then, a shadow fell over them. From the depths of the island's maw, something else emerged, a figure clad in tattered robes, their face obscured by a mask of woven bark. Their presence sent a chill down Brook's spine. Ah! I don't suppose this is a friendly local? The stranger raised a hand, and the island obeyed. Vines shot toward the crew like spears. Sanji barely dodged, his leg igniting as he kicked through the attack. Who the hell is this guy? Doesn't matter, Luffy shouted, darting forward. We take him down. But the masked figure was faster. With a flick of their wrist, the ground beneath Luffy erupted, sending him crashing into a wall of thorns. The crew cried out, but before they could regroup, the island's terrain shifted again, spikes of stone burst from below, forcing them to scatter. Chopper, in his heavy point, barely managed to shield Robin from a falling boulder. We can't keep this up. We're too tired. Frankie's mechanical arms whirred as he blasted a path clear. Then we make an opening. Super. The figure didn't let him finish. A vine coiled around Frankie's leg, yanking him off balance before slamming him into the ground. Zoro cursed, charging forward with a three-sword slash, but the figure moved, weaving between his strikes like smoke. Their palms struck his chest, and suddenly, Zoro couldn't breathe, his muscles locked, his sword slipping from his grasp. Zoro! Nami screamed, summoning a thundercloud. But the figure merely tilted their head, and the storm dissipated before it could strike. Panic clawed at Luffy's chest. This wasn't just a fight, it was a trap. The island, the figure. They'd been lured here. Then, a voice cut through the chaos. Stop. Everyone froze. Standing at the edge of the battlefield, her hands raised, was a young woman, her skin marked with the same strange patterns as the island. Her eyes were wide with desperation. Please. Don't hurt them. The masked figure hesitated. Luffy's mind raced. Who? The woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. They're not your enemy. The island, it's protecting us. Nami's breath hitched. Protecting? From what? Before the woman could answer, the ground trembled again, but this time, it wasn't the island. Something far worse was coming. And the straw hats were right in its path. Word count, 2,000. The Straw Hat crew had barely caught their breath from the last battle when the island beneath them shuddered violently, its massive limbs rising from the sea like the roots of a waking titan. Luffy's sandals skidded across the shifting ground as he steadied himself, his gaze locked onto the distant, glowing eyes of the living landmass. This isn't just some big animal, Zoro muttered, his swords already drawn. It's thinking. It's hunting us. Nami's hands trembled around her klima tact, the dials inside whirring as she calculated their odds. If this thing sinks, we go down with it, no ship, no escape. Usopp's knees knocked together, but he forced himself upright, slingshot in hand. Alright. So we just gotta make sure it doesn't sink us first. Sanji exhaled a stream of smoke, his eyes sharp despite the fatigue weighing on them all. Easier said than done. This isn't just about punching harder. We need a plan. Robin's voice cut through the tension. Its movements are deliberate. It's herding us toward the center, where the terrain is weakest. Chopper's hooves dug into the earth as another tremor nearly toppled him. Then we can't let it control the battlefield. Luffy cracked his knuckles, a grin spreading across his face despite the dire stakes. Then we flip the game. Everyone, listen up. The plan was reckless, even by their standards. Using the island's own movements against it, they would bait it into overextending, then strike at the exposed core where Robin's reconnaissance suggested its heart, or whatever passed for one, lay hidden. Frankie would rig a makeshift cannon from the wreckage of their previous fight, Usopp and Nami would provide covering fire, while Zoro and Sanji carved a path for Luffy to deliver the finishing blow. The moment the first boulder-sized fist of earth came crashing down, the fight was on. Zoro's blades flashed, cleaving through stone and vine like tendons, but the island regenerated faster than they could damage it. Sanji's kick sent tremors through the ground, destabilizing its footing, while Robin's sprouting arms wrenched apart fissures to slow its advance. Usopp's slingshot snapped, but he didn't hesitate. Scooping up a jagged shard of rock, he loaded it into Nami's klima-tact-enhanced gust, sending it spiraling into the creature's eye. It roared, the sound like splitting bedrock, and lashed out blindly. Frankie's cannon roared, the impact cratering its chest, but the opening sealed too fast. It's adapting. Brook's violin screeched as he dodged a swipe, his blade slicing at tendrils that recoiled like living whips. Luffy's muscles burned as he launched himself skyward, Gear Third swelling his fist to colossal size. Now or never. The island sensed the threat, its maw gaping wide to swallow him whole, until Chopper's monster point form barreled into its jaw, forcing it shut. The final strike landed with a thunderclap of force, the shockwave rippling across the island's surface as cracks spiderwebbed from the impact. For a breathless moment, the world hung suspended, then the creature shuddered, its limbs collapsing inward as the glow in its eyes dimmed. Panting, bleeding, but alive, the crew staggered together as the island stilled beneath them. But as the dust settled, a deeper rumble echoed from below. The fight wasn't over, it had only just begun. Word count, 2,000. The air crackled with tension as Luffy stood atop the Thousand Sunny's prow, his straw hat casting a shadow over his determined eyes. The ocean roared beneath them, but the true threat loomed ahead, a colossal, living island, its jagged peaks shifting like the spines of some ancient beast. The crew had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. This wasn't just an enemy, it was a force of nature, a primordial terror awakened by their journey into the uncharted waters of the New World. "All right, everyone," Luffy said, cracking his knuckles, his voice steady despite the tremors beneath their feet. "This ends here." The island roared, its maw splitting open to reveal a cavernous gullet lined with stalactite teeth. A tidal wave of vines erupted from its surface, snaking toward the Sunny with terrifying speed. Sanji was the first to react, his leg igniting in a blaze of haki as he launched himself into the air. "Hell's memories," he shouted, his kick carving a fiery arc through the tendrils, reducing them to ash. But more came, endless and relentless. Zoro's swords gleamed as he leapt into the fray, his muscles straining as he channeled his full power. Santoryu Ugi, Ichidai Sanzen Daisen Seikai. The air itself split under the force of his slash, the shockwave ripping through the island's flesh, sending chunks of rock and vegetation flying. Yet the wounds began to heal almost instantly, the creature's regenerative power defying logic. Nami's voice cut through the chaos. "It's drawing energy from the sea. We need to disrupt its connection." She raised her Klima tact, summoning a storm with a furious cry. Lightning lanced down, striking the water around the island, but the beast barely flinched. Robin's hands bloomed across the monster's surface, her fingers digging into its flesh. Mille fleur, gigantesco mano. She wrenched with all her strength, tearing a massive chunk free, but the island retaliated, spewing a torrent of acidic sap that forced her to retreat. Usopp's breath came in ragged gasps as he fired explosive pellets into the creature's eyes, each shot precise but seemingly futile. "We're not making a dent," he yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. Luffy's fists clenched. He could feel the weight of his crew's exhaustion, their fading hope. But he also felt something else, the pulse of the island's heart, a rhythmic thud deep within its core. "There," he shouted, pointing to a fissure where the vines were thickest. "That's its weak point." Without hesitation, he stretched his arms back, his body coiling like a spring. "Gear forth, Snakeman." His form blurred as he shot forward, his fists a whirlwind of devastating blows. King Cobra. The impact sent shockwaves through the island, cracks spreading like spiderwebs. But the creature wasn't done. A massive tendril, thicker than the Sunny's mast, slammed into Luffy, sending him crashing into the deck. Blood trickled from his lip, but he grinned. "That all you got?" The island shuddered, its entire mass convulsing as it prepared a final, cataclysmic strike. The sea itself seemed to recoil, the waves turning black with churned sediment. "Luffy, we can't hold it off much longer," Chopper cried, his monster point form straining against the onslaught. Brook's violin sang a haunting melody, his soul-chilling aura freezing sections of the vines, but even his power had limits. Then, from the depths of the chaos, a voice rang out, soft but unwavering. "I have an idea." It was Jinbei, his face set in grim determination. "The island is alive, but it's still bound by the sea. If we can disrupt its connection long enough, Luffy can deliver the final blow." "How?" Frankie asked, his mechanical arms whirring as he blasted another wave of tendrils. Jinbei's hands pressed together, his mastery of fish-man karate humming through his veins. "I'll use the ocean itself." With a roar, he summoned a towering wave, shaping it with his will. Vagabond drill. The water spiraled into a colossal drill, piercing the island's underbelly. The creature shrieked, its body convulsing as the salt water flooded its veins. This was their chance. Luffy didn't hesitate. He launched himself skyward, his body glowing with the sheer force of his haki. Gamu Gamu no. The air around him warped, his fist pulling back further than ever before. King Kong gun. The punch connected with the island's core, the impact resonating like a thunderclap. The shockwave rippled outward, the creature's body fracturing, its tendrils withering. A final, ear-splitting wail echoed across the sea as the island crumbled, its mass collapsing into the depths. Silence. The crew stood breathless, the weight of their victory settling over them. The Thousand Sunny, battered but unbroken, floated atop the now calm waters. Luffy collapsed to his knees, his energy spent, but his grin never faded. "We did it." Tears welled in Chopper's eyes as he rushed to his captain's side, healing already underway. Nami let out a shaky laugh, her knees giving way as relief flooded her. Zoro sheathed his swords, his usual stoicism softened by the faintest smile. Jinbei, panting from exertion, placed a hand on Luffy's shoulder. "You never cease to amaze, Captain." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, the crew gathered on the deck. The world felt different now, not just because the living island was gone, but because they had faced the impossible and triumphed. Usopp raised a toast, his voice thick with emotion. To the Straw Hat Pirates. And whatever comes next. Luffy's laughter rang out, bright and unburdened, as the Thousand Sunny sailed onward, toward new adventures, new battles, and the dreams they had yet to fulfill. The sea stretched endlessly before them, vast and uncharted, but they were ready. Together. Word count, 2000.